No one in the final decade of their life ever said, I wish I had less strength and I wish I had less endurance. So you cannot be too strong and you cannot be too fit. The only time that one would throttle back on the pursuit of those is A, if doing so is coming at the expense of something else, either with respect to your health or your life. And two, if the pursuit of that at such an extreme level produces risk of injury. Could I be stronger than I am today? Yes. I'll give you an example. We know that in resistance training, the sweet spot for pure strength is 1 to 5 reps. When your goal is to maximize strength, you need to be pushing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reps. Once you start thinking about hypertrophy, muscle size, we're starting to think about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 reps. Once we start thinking about muscular endurance, we start thinking about north of 15, right? Those are the general patterns of resistance training. Again, we could go into much more detail around that, but just to finish the point here, why do I not do much training at 1 to 5 reps? In fact, these days, I don't do any training at 1 to 5 reps anymore. Train at 1 to 5 reps comes at a risk, especially for heavy compound movements. So like, I'm okay getting a little bit less of a strength benefit while still, of course, getting stronger, but training at a higher rep load. So I'm targeting 8 to 12 reps with 1 to 2 reps in reserve is basically how I'm doing my resistance training. That means every set I'm doing, I would expect to get to within about 1 rep of failure somewhere. So today when I lifted, I don't think I did less than 7. I didn't do more than 12. And the weight was always titrated so that I was either failing, almost failing, or 1 rep away from failing, somewhere in there. And I was adjusting the weight constantly on every exercise to get there, with the exception of 1 exercise. I did push-ups was one of the things I did. Push-ups are kind of more in the muscle endurance. Obviously I'm doing more reps when I was doing push-ups, but pretty much everything else was in that range. So again, I'm not fully maximizing strength anymore because the cost of it might be a little bit high in terms of injury risk. Similarly, I'm not strength training 24/7 because I need to make time to do my endurance training and other types of training. Again, the intensity of my training is not that high, at least 3 days a week. So the 3 resistance days are pretty hard because I'm really only doing each body part once a week. So when I'm doing it, I'll spend that 90 minutes really kind of hammering those body parts. 3 of those days are just zone 2. So my three of my 4 cardio days are zone 2 days where I'm doing, I'm on a bike and I am riding at a level of intensity that actually allows me to still talk. Not talk like I am now, but talking in a sort of a strained way. So for me, that's about a heart rate of 140 beats per minute. And that's just not taking a huge toll on me. Like those are almost like recovery days for me. And then 1 day a week, I do a really, really hard VO2 max day. And that's a really hard day. That burns a lot of matches. 4 days of cardio, 3 days of resistance. Now, that's gonna change in the summer when I'm gonna add 3 days of swimming. And I will end up doing some swims on some resistance days. I know a lot of people do that. I know a lot of people will say, hey, I'm gonna do a little bit of a warm up on the treadmill or the Stepmaster before I lift. But I actually have a pretty strong point of view on how we should warm up to lift. And I don't think walking on the treadmill or running on the treadmill or being on the Stairmaster or on the bike is a great prep for the lift. I think it's better to warm up for a lift doing movements that prepare you to lift. So for example, like if it's a leg day, so Monday's leg day, right? So what am I gonna do? I'm going to start by doing a bunch of core stabilizing stuff. So I'm gonna do a whole bunch of this dynamic neuromuscular stabilization stuff. So you get into basically these baby positions and you really learn to activate your core as you move around in a 6-month position and stuff like that. I then do a whole bunch of, like, what a 90-90 is, or a shin box exercise, a position where you're really, you can start out doing it isometrically, but ultimately going through a slow eccentric and concentric phase of movement that's kind of activating glutes. So I go through basically a whole DNS sequence. Then I get into a dynamic movement prep. So then I get into a bunch of bouncing, a bunch of footwork, and then I start with really light weights. So I'll go to a leg extension machine and do very, very light leg extensions, very, very light leg curls, come back and do more jumping and moving and lunging and go back and forth. So I'll spend 20 minutes doing a warm-up, but the warm-up is geared for me to lift. Whereas if I had just sat on a bike and pedaled around, that doesn't actually replicate any of the movements I'm going to do when I start loading myself.